Well, hello, and if everything went well, welcome to the new look Curmudgeon. I have a new video editor. He's and Jim Wampler have tickled the stuff at the end, so if you've been just blowing that off, check it out at least once. That way you get to hear the whole song. Yeah, that song's got a story behind it. I thought what I'd do was I'd answer a couple of comments from the last Curmudgeon I did that I wasn't able to answer on the live stream, and then go into some of the comments on the live stream. So that's what we're going to do. This was an interesting question that will take up more time than I wanted to do on the live stream. For a scholarly chapter on the history of religion in D&D, I am interested in the origins of the use of the term mythos in gods, demigods, and heroes, used throughout the supplement to refer to the whole of a culture's pantheon and legends, alongside other terms like mythology or gods. The use of mythos used in this way was not really established in the mainstream, but rather seems to have come from the tradition of referring to H.P. Lovecraft's work as Cthulhu mythos. Do you remember anything about how this terminology ended up in gods, demigods, and heroes, and later in all the section titles and deities and demigods? Yeah, because I used it. I like the word. I edited the book. Gary and I discussed it briefly. He said, what do you feel most comfortable with? I said, mythos handles all the others that are more specific to certain ones. Let's go with that. It fit the OED dictionary, or the OED definition, and so I went with mythos, and it stuck. No mystery. It was just an easy to understand, encompassing term that referenced the entirety of a culture's beliefs. Now, no, we didn't get into pixies and minor house spirits and lares and stuff like, or layers, or however, lares. We didn't get into that. We just went for the big guys and girls. I don't know if I answered this on the live stream. Age-old question about the sleep spell. I'm having trouble tonight. Sleep spell. If it's used and the intended target is asleep, can you easily slit their throat or put their blade through their heart? Certainly, they're asleep. Now, and because it's kind of a magical sleep and not a physical sleep, I might give them a very small chance of sensing what was going to happen and maybe not get completely killed. I don't know, depend on the circumstances, but otherwise, sure. I mean, if you get right down to it, if there's a band of orcs chasing you and you can figure out a way to put them all to sleep one night, well, yeah. Good and evil, I was just wondering to see if I could get a Boule miniature of mine signed by you on its base. I'm not too big on going to cons, but I could send it. Sure, send it. Contact me on my Facebook page with a private message. And sure. I even have one here that's already signed on the bottom. It's green. I think it might be one of Wampler's crew. Anyway, it's escaped me right now. Disappointed to hear you plan to you stopped going to Massachusetts Total Con. And I was one of my usual 4, and he's most likely to go to it because that's where his fiance's relatives live in Mass. And I'm sorry too, because they were absolutely great and wonderful people and treated me far better than I had any reason to be treated. But is what it is. I'm getting older. I'm 72, and it's just a real pain in the ass to fly nowadays. Okay. Now, this is an interesting question. I'm going to synopsize it. They use an online format, and everybody gets to see the map instead of exploring it. And this writer feels that it detracts from the theater of the mind and removes the need for a mapper. And I agree. If you're keen on adopting all the trappings and all the stylings that we did way back then, yeah, mapper's a really important person. There's several ways you can do fast maps and fill them in back later. Each mapper I've ever met had their own little code, though they were very similar to each other. I know that nobody ever, got together and worked them out. Pardon me. I don't think it's cool, Now, all right, I'll qualify that. I had just had a Kickstarter fund for the Temple of the Weaver Queen, and there is a complete map available, to the DM. There's also a partial scrawlings of a crude map that is, I think, still available to be found along the way. So I don't think that spoils it. But having somebody just hand you here's the map of the keep, or the dungeons, or the punishment cellars, or whatever you want to call them, I'm not in favor of that if I don't have to, because I agree theater of the mind is lessened if you do. Okay, that's the stuff from before. Now, comments on the live stream. Apparently, a lot of you liked it, and a few people want us to do it again. So, there's a good chance after GaryCon, which is coming up in a week from today. Today is St. Patrick's Day, by the way, as I'm taping this, but you won't see it until a day or two later, because I have a new editing arrangement that needs more time, because they're not on the other side of the world, and the time differential just happened to work amazingly in my favor. So I have to do it a night earlier so that it's still available for all of you. Enjoy it on Saturday morning with your coffee and your Cheerios, or whatever it is you do on Sunday morning or Saturday morning. So yeah, we'll do another one. I'm not doing a Curmudgeon next week because I'll be at GaryCon. Jim and I'll probably do one the week after. I'm guessing we'll try to do it a little sooner this time, and then I'll get back to doing regular ones. But I've kind of enjoyed the slack in the schedule. I'm astounded. I hit 3,000 subscribers. But don't worry, I'm not going to monetize, and you won't have condom and lubricant commercials pop up in the middle of a serious discussion of how many tentacles does a mind flayer actually have. I had one rather disconcerting comment. Glad to see I'm still with you. Yeah, the quote was, "You're still with us." Well, yeah, me too. Probably even more so than you are. Okay, that brings me up. We're coming to GaryCon. Those of you who aren't going, try to see if you can get involved virtually. And those of you who are going, I'll be glad to see you there. I'm going up on Wednesday and then driving back on Sunday. And the weather looks like it's going to be really nice. Midlish 40s to midlish 50s the whole week while we're there. Wouldn't that be cool? All right. A commenter said he wanted to stat the curmudgeon in the cellar in his next dungeon. How would I stat myself to be a character in a dungeon? Well, I am old, so strength 10. I can still pick up a 50-pound bag of birdseed. I just got to be careful how. Intelligence. Well, I modestly gave myself a 17. And for wisdom, I gave myself an 18. Because, acquired wisdom over age. Constitution an 18 because I figured, shit, I beat cancer twice. Tough, hard to kill. Dex, well, I used to be really dexterous. Dexterity. Used to be really agile. Not so much anymore. I'm down to about a 12. I would have said I was an honest 15 or 16 when I was a younger man. I played softball till I was in my mid-40s. And a charisma? Well, I gave myself a dual charisma. Because I can be charming as all get out and be an 18. And then when the ire and the wrath has been provoked, 6. As to what you wanted to know about what I would have, what treasures and horror secrets would I have from my cellar, well, you're still not going to know, because I'm not going to say. That'll be the horrible things you discover when you finally do get down here. I realized my stone wall was a little wobbly there. Okay. Could you talk about why you and Gary decided to leave the powers blank in the artifacts and relics? I love this about the power magic items. Well, I'm assuming that you're talking about the stuff in Eldritch Wizardry and other places where the word suggested was used quite frequently. And there was a purposeful reason behind the choice of that word and that philosophy. Gary and I didn't believe that everything ought to be a carbon copy in everybody's world. We already knew it was going to be bad enough when everybody had every copy of every book, so it got even worse when we got into advanced. But he didn't feel that if you went, we'll take some minor devil, Jonathan, and he could be in my world, and I could use the suggested stats just verbatim, and he could be in your world using suggested things that you tweaked, and we wanted to see diversion and diversity in that regard, and not rote follow the trail. Not follow the breadcrumbs. We weren't going to put out any breadcrumbs. Pardon me. It's not that late yet. We weren't going to put out a breadcrumb trail. We were still under the delusion that many DMs would feel free to run with their own ideas and modify stuff, when in actuality everybody was still playing it as it came out of the book. That's why we wanted to see. Now, if there were certain traits or abilities or whatever attributed in the mythos to certain deities, well, then they had, not recommended, they had powers or abilities or skills or, however they were phrased. They had those. The rest were suggested. I rather like the idea that players can't just open a door, see hear a rote description and go, oh, giant platypi. They have stingers in their tails. I don't want to hear that. They might have stingers in their tails, and they might have a twirly eyeball gaze that will charm you, or something else. We didn't want to see everything being exactly the same as the next one. So that's why. Okay, question. If you have 2 or more Wiz PCs in a party, do you allow the Wiz PC players to coordinate their spell lists, or do you prefer no conferring? Now, I'm going to be provocative and say that you should not allow the Wiz PCs to confer, because wizards should be played as ego-driven, competitive, and secretive. I simply wouldn't allow it. Mainly for those reasons. Now, once the wizards reach the field of battle, so to speak, I have no problem if they wish to let each other know what they're capable of or in what situations they might be better suited. That's entirely up to the Wiz PCs. And again, if you're playing a wizard, a magic user, in this stereotypical ego-driven, secretive, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's the way you want to play it. But no hedging in advance. Okay, you take this, I'll take that. No. If both of them end up taking the same thing, oh, isn't that funny? If neither one of them take it, oh, isn't that too bad? How are the original games played? Are modern Let's Play sessions accurate or completely different? Well, I'm not exactly sure what that latter is about Let's Play sessions. I do know that we had both. Well, we were fascinated with time and its passage or its suspension. If we were playing, especially if we were doing a test session, and something came up, because we occasionally, in the very early days, did a little testing at the office during the afternoon if we didn't have a lot to do and all the shipping was done and everything. All right, that's when we got some testing in, so we didn't have to come back after dinner. But if something came up, and this also happened when we were out in Greyhawk, doing adventures in Greyhawk, or Rob's adventures in Greyhawk and different places. If it came to real life clock thing, okay, we could just absolutely suspend time. Allow the party to go back to the last unoccupied, safe room that they traversed or explored, and go in there and stop time. And then when we all got back together, we would literally step out the door and resume. 2 days later, 2 weeks later, whatever it took. We also paid a lot of what I felt to be unnecessary attention to time about healing. However, that was one of the things that drove our desire to have a stable of PCs, so that if this one's healing and that one's over there in the Northwest, and there's something going on over here in the Mid-South, well, so-and-so could go. So that's real different. We would literally suspend time or allow an overnight in a room. Okay, and they were overnighting in that room until we got back to play again. That was both very detailed and very loosey-goosey. we were very detailed in, no, you don't have, this stuff hasn't been replenished, or that stuff hasn't, you know, you're exactly where we left off. Exactly. And no, the monsters haven't been sniffing around in that time. Everything stopped. So you're at no disadvantage any greater than what you were before it stopped. So, you know, that's the way we played. I understand it's not quite that way nowadays. But then again, I've never played in any of the later, newer editions. From what I hear, it's probably a little different. I don't know. I'm really not qualified to give you a definitive answer on that. I can only tell you the way we did it. And, I mean, literally, it was 8-10 days later, okay, a quick rebrief amongst the players, and whatever the DM felt like, you know, fluffing us up on, and we stepped out of the room and kept going. And, you know, our character sheets kept track of where we were, and we went right back to it. That's about it. Hope to see many people at GaryCon. I've done the last two virtually. And look forward to driving up with Jim. Looks like we might have some decent weather. All right, now if everything went right, this has been altered. That the beginning is cleaner, and the after part that's coming next has new and different pictures in it, and different flashcards, because we have a new editor, and of course they're there also. So if everything goes right, you'll be looking at this sometime on Saturday morning, and watch the whole thing if you haven't done it for a while, so you can see who my sponsor is. Oh, one other thing. The bad part, I always save it for last. Actually, I almost forgot. I'm going to have to be starting a Patreon so that I can pay to have this work done on my videos, because I don't know how to do it. So I will be starting a Patreon sometime after GaryCon, I'm sure. Yeah, well, obviously, it'll be after GaryCon, and probably before I go to Minneapolis for DaveCon. So if you like what you're, number one, if you're watching this and you aren't a subscriber, click subscribe. And if you like what you're seeing, throw a couple of bucks my way so I can pay my video guy. I'm gonna need at least a couple $100 a month to be able to find good video services, because I can't do it. And I don't, if you're interested in being a sponsor, come see me. Anyway, Dodata Gobi.
Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy. collection of micro armory, tight with tramp under a tree.
High as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Curmudgeon.